Today's lesson is on multiplying decimal by powers of 10. Let's just get started with reviewing how you can multiply a whole number by 10. So remember back to when we were doing this, and to multiply by 10 we would put a 0 at the end of the number. But just by saying we add a 0 is not really that clear. Because just by saying add a 0, well, then is this example here correct? 34 times 10 equals 304. Technically, I added a 0, but it's not correct. We have to say that we write the 0 at the end of the number, so the 0 becomes the ones digit. So this makes sense because each place value gets replaced by the place value that is 10 times as great. So 34 is the same as saying 3 tens plus 4 ones. So 34 times 10 would then be 3 hundreds plus 4 tens, which equals 340. So if we have then 4 tenths times 10, this is the same as saying 4 tenths times 10, which place value is 10 times the tenths. Well, if we have 0.4 times 10, then we're going to get 4 tenths times 10, which is the same as saying 4 ones, or 4. So if we're timesing by tens, and we had tenths, we times by 10, those are going to then turn to ones. If we have ones and we times by 10, we're going to get tens. So let's look at this a little bit more closely here with these examples. So multiply the place value by 10. So if we have hundredths and we multiply by 10, well, looking at this picture above, if we have hundredths, we multiply by 10, we're going to end up with tenths. If we have ones and we multiply by 10, we're going to end up with tens. If we have tenths and we multiply by 10, we're going to have ones. And if we have thousands and we multiply by tens, we're going to get hundredths. So you're always moving place value to the left. Okay, so we're going to use place value to multiply the number by 10. Now if we have 3 hundredths and we multiply that by 10, we're going to end up with 3 tenths. Or if we're putting this into decimals, it would be 0.3. If we are going 4 tenths times 10, then we are going to go, we're going to end up with 4 ones. Oh, sorry, ones. Or we could just write the number 4. If we have 5 ones and we multiply by 10, we're going to end up with 5 tens. Or we can write the number 50. 5 tens would be the same as 50. If we have 7 thousandths and we multiply by 10, we're going to end up with 7 hundredths. Or we could say that we have 0.07. Both would mean the exact same thing. Okay. Now, if we look at this example here, we have 0.005 times 10. Now, we have the thousands, so we have 5 thousandths here. If we multiply by 10, we end up with 5 hundredths. So if 10 is in the thousandths position to start, then after multiplying by 10, it will be in the hundredths position. Okay, so we have moved the decimal one spot to the right. So let's look at this. If we are multiplying using place value and we have 0.5 and we times it by 10, we're taking our decimal and we're going to move it to the next place value because this 5 is moving from the tenths. It needs to move to the ones place value. So 0.5 times 10 is going to equal 5. If I have 0.2 and I times it by 10, my decimal place is going to move 1 place to the right, and I'm going to end up with an answer of 0.2. So this 0 that was in the tenths is moving to the ones. This 2 that's in the hundredths is moving to the tenths. Okay. Let's look at C. So if I'm multiplying by 10, again, my 0 is moving, or my decimal is moving 1 place to the right. So I'm going to end up with an answer of 0.2. 0.06. So it's moving from the thousands place to the hundredths place. Now if I have D, I have 0.09. I'm multiplying by 10. My decimal place is moving one spot to the right, so my decimal is now going to be here. My answer is going to be 0.9. Okay, so every time you multiply by 10, you're just moving that decimal one place to the right. Now, we're going to move the decimal point to show multiplying by 10 using these examples here. So let's look at these examples. We have 5.4, now we have 54.0. 60.3, now I have 603. 300.4, now I have 3004. So what pattern do you notice? Like I just said, if you're multiplying by 10, we move the decimal point one place value to the right, always, no matter what, okay? Really important to remember this rule. We're going to review it in just a bit. So let's use this rule to now complete these exercises on your whiteboard. You moving that decimal place one place value to the right to multiply by 10. When you are done, you are going to resume your screencast to continue on with the next part of your lesson. So that was multiplying by 10. Now 100 is 10 times 10. So to multiply a number by 100, you can multiply by 10 and then multiply the result by 10 again. So if we have 3.462 times 100, this is really saying 3.462 times 10 times 10. So therefore, we're going to move the decimal point once to multiply by 10 the first time. So just like we were doing, you move it once for 10. Then you need to move it a second time for the next multiplication by 10. So we're moving the decimal point 2 times to multiply by 100. So 3.462 times 100 is the same as saying 346.2. That decimal point has moved 2 place values to the right. So this is the rule for multiplying by 100. To multiply by 100, move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Okay, easy way to remember this. 100 has 2 zeros in it, so you move it 2 places. 10 has 1 zero in it, you move it 1 place to the right. Let's try these examples. We'll do A together and then you can complete the rest on your whiteboard. So let's look at 3.62 times 100. I'm multiplying by 100, I need to move my decimal 2 place values to the right. So 3.62 equals 100. If I move it 2 place values to the right, that equals 362.0. I want you to try B, C, and D on your whiteboards, and then you're going to resume your screencast when you're done. So we moved the decimal point once to multiply by 10 and twice to multiply by 100. How many times do we move it then to multiply by 1,000? Well, if we follow the rule, how many zeros does 1,000 have in it? It has 3. So we're probably going to move this decimal place 3 places to the right to multiply by 1,000. So 2.467 times 1,000 is going to equal, if I'm moving it 3 places to the right, it's going to equal 2,467.0. I've moved my decimal from here, starting here, moving it 3 places, 1, 2, 3, it ends up here, and I'm putting a 0 placeholder on the end. Let's try these exercises on our whiteboards. So move the decimal point. You're going to move it 3 place values to multiply by 1,000. Try A and B on your whiteboards, and then you can try the bonus once you are done on your whiteboards, and then resume your screencast. Let's just quickly review what we've learned in this lesson for multiplying by powers of 10. So if we have 2.678 times 10, I move my decimal place once to the right because the 10 has 1 zero. So that's going to give me an answer of 26.78. So again, the decimal moves to the right once. If I have 2.678, now I'm multiplying by 100. 100 has 2 zeros, therefore I'm moving that decimal place value 2 spots to the right. So it's going to end up being 267.8. If I'm going to multiply 2.678 times 1,000, 1,000 has 3 zeros. Therefore, I'm going to move that decimal place 3 place values to the right, giving me an answer of 2,678.0. Okay. Now let's look at these these examples here. let's do A together. Pay attention to whether it's a 10, 100, or 1,000 because now they're mixed up. So let's look at A. It says 0.6 times 100. I need to move that decimal place 2 place values. So if I move it once, but now I'm out of numbers, so what do? Well, I'm going to just add in a 0 as a placeholder. Okay, so my answer is going to be 6. I'm going to add that 0, decimal 0. So 0.6 times 100 is going to give me 60. Okay, let's do B one more time together. Or you guys can do B, C, D, E, and F on your whiteboards. Then you're going to continue on with your screencast when you're ready. So before we begin our exercise today, let's just do 1 or 2 word problems together. So Sarah makes $12.50 an hour mowing lawns. How much does Sarah make in 10 hours? So what I need to do is I need to do $12.50, and she makes this in 10, or how much does she make in 10 hours? So she makes $12.50 in 1 hour, so I need to multiply by 10. So if I'm multiplying by 10, my decimal place is going to move 1 spot to the right. So in 10 hours, Sarah is going to make $125. Okay, so I've moved that decimal place 1 place to the right. Now, if I have B, a clothing store owner wants to buy 100 coats for $32.69 each. How much will the coats cost? So she wants to buy 100 of them. Each of those cost $32.69. So again, I'm multiplying. I know that when I'm multiplying by 100, I need to move that decimal place 2 place values to the right. So my answer is going to be $3,269. So I'm going to put decimal 00 to show that there's 0 cents. Why don't you give C and D a try on your whiteboards, and then you can resume your screencast to see your assignment for today's lesson. Okay, so your assignment today is your Jump Math book, pages 26 and 27. And then when you are done, you can give that extension activity a try if you are ahead and you have time to do it.